timing, guys, because we're just about to get started. Today, I'm introducing Will, and Will has been keeping ants for over 4 years now. He's really passionate. We've talked about it a bunch of times, and he's put together a pretty interesting PowerPoint for you today. So I'm really excited to see and learn about how ants integrate and interact with Australian wildlife and ecosystems. So yeah, take it away, Will.
Just gonna share my screen. We share screen.
Morning,
I think
Margo.
it's
It's
this one.
11 o'clock. It's morning. I'll give you that. Good morning, man.
Sorry, I haven't used this computer for screen sharing before, so
No worries,
it's
dude.
not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Queensland's. I think they must change the time zones. Like Queensland goes to the. Sorry, Sydney and Melbourne go to the that change the time zones. Oh my God, not change the time zones. They do daylight savings in another month, is it? I think. But yeah, we're still on the same time zone here in Queensland as well.
I'm gonna quickly leave then rejoin
I
so
can
I can
present it
work.
to you. Okay, yeah, no worries. I thought it was in no, I think it's in summer that they change actually. Here it changes because of winter. Am I going crazy? No. Australian daylight savings. When is it? First Sunday in October and ends in April. Yeah. It's honestly a really good thing for Sydney. It's honestly a really good thing from Sydney and stuff because you get longer days. I think a lot of other countries in the world do it as well, but in Queensland there was a bit of an argument apparently about no, like 30 years ago, there was a referendum in Queensland about the daylight savings, and a lot of the people living inland voted against it. Well, a lot of farmers voted against it because it was disruptive with um, their farming work, like getting up early when the sun wasn't hot, whilst kids would come home from school and they'd still be working, like or something like that whilst it was really hot. So it worked out better for them if they didn't change the daylight savings. Queensland lost the referendum, so that's why the other states have it, but we don't, which kind of sucks for us people living on the coast. But it is what it is. Anyway, sweet. Looks like you've. I can see the presentation now, Will. So I'm keen, dude.
Awesome. This is Australian native ants and some stuff about invasive species. This is just a glossary for if anyone wants to go over it after the meeting. This is the Australian ants that I'm going to be talking about today. Meat ants, Rhytidopanera metallica, banded sugar ants, and Memesia brevinota.
Yeah, cool.
There's some key terms.
Is the meat ant the one that I was talking about in South Australia that time? That's very like seasonal,
Yeah,
busting through.
Iridomyrmex purpurus.
Yeah, cool.
These just key terms like the head, thorax, gaster, which is the third section of the ant, trophallaxis, which is where they transfer food between members of the colony, mouth to mouth. Antennae, which is the sensory organs for smell, taste, and touch. The mandibles, which is jaws, identification, and then a nuptial flight. So this is the common ants and how to identify them. Meat ants are highly aggressive. They have massive nests and they dominate an ecosystem where they live. They are very good biological control agents in where they live, able to regulate corpses, pest species to like eucalyptus trees and other trees and bushes by eating and limiting how many there are. They're roughly 10 to 12 millimeters in length. Their head is a red to a deep purple color. Um, their thorax is a red to a black, and their gaster is black to greenish. And they're rather easy to identify because they don't have many similar lookalikes. They they're like spread over across all of Australia. So most people have memories of being bitten by them before. It's either by them Rhytidopanera metallica or by blants of some type, because they're very widespread.
Do they have
They're,
quite long legs? By the looks of that photo, it looks like they have like really long legs or not so
yeah,
much.
they do. They live out in the desert, so they have the long legs to lift them up off the ground where it's hottest.
Right. Are they pretty quick as well?
Yeah, they move very, very quickly.
Okay.
Not as fast as golden-tailed grants, but still extremely fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And do they have like, is it all one size ant? Like, what would you say? Because like I, for example, know close to nothing about identifying ants. I can see like drastic differences in sizes, or like a green ant, which I know the next one you're about to talk about. Like I can
Yeah,
see in these two species at like the color, but like at an identification level, like is there size different outside of the size? Like what are some other differences that you might like pick on? I know you said the thorax is different as well.
yeah. It's like mainly side compared to the rest of Iridomyrmex, which is the small black trail ants you see on the ground everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so so like the rest of the genus is super tiny, super small, and almost completely black in color. I'm pretty sure the closest lookalike to meat ants is northern meat ant, Iridomyrmex sanguinis, which is about half the size and a brighter red in color.
Okay. Wow. So
From
they're
my
really
knowledge, that's like the most close lookalike.
cool. Thanks, dude.
Then green-headed ants, they're another extremely common ant here in Australia. They span across along the entire coast all the way inland as well. They're also diurnal, but these ones are also stinging, unlike meat ants, which don't sting. Um, so these ones, instead of focusing on numbers and being large, they use venom to kill prey, and they usually sting kids because they walk over or sit on the nests, which are rather small and hard to see unless you're looking for them.
Right.
These are
Um,
also a good example of humans forcing evolution onto a species because in urban areas they have in recent years they've grown to be much smaller than rural counterparts because they're doing a lot more scavenging for food instead of fighting for it. So they don't have to be as big, bulky, and strong.
wow. That's really cool. That's really quick evolution too. I guess it makes more sense because they would have such a fast turnover of, of ants. How long does an average ant live? Does it change
Um,
species a lot?
for small black Iridomyrmex, like the trail ants, they usually live for around a month or two.
Mhm.
Queens will live for 4 to 5 years. Um, then for green-headed ants, workers will probably survive 5 to 6 months
Wow.
or a bit longer. Then and queens usually live for 2 years in captivity, from what I know of. I'm not sure about the lifespan in the wild. But then things like Blance workers can live for over 2 years, and queens can live for decades.
Damn. Wow. Wow. And sorry, Will, to keep interrupting you, but another
All good.
question. What does diurnal mean?
It means that they are day hunting,
Okay.
like diurnal and nocturnal.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you.
Right, so the Panera Metallica are super easy to identify because of their coloration. It's like very bright, very pronounced, and iridescent. The closest lookalike is, I'm pretty sure, is right to the Panera Victoria, which is slightly smaller and more brown in color. And these ones are around 5 to 7 millimeters long, green to purple on the head, and thorax, and then a green to a black color on the gaster.
Cool.
Then the next two species I'm going over is Camponotus consubrinus, or banded sugar ant, and Mimisia brevinota, or the giant red bull ant. Camponotus consubrinus is another extremely common ant here in Australia. They're found everywhere as well. And they have three color morphs, which makes them a bit harder to identify, but it's still rather easy due to them being so distinct with the band on their gaster. You can see right here on the gaster on the first segment how it's yellow in color while the rest is black.
Yeah.
That's like the telltale sign to see that it's a Camponos consubrinus. They're on the larger side as well, reaching 10 to 12 millimeters in length. And these ones are nocturnal, so they aren't as seen as much. They also have nocturnal nuptial flights. Um, but these ones are less aggressive than meat ants. They prefer to run from big enemies than like bite and fight them.
Right.
They like to hunt and nest around and up in eucalyptus trees, drinking nectars from the flowers and eating pests for the eucalyptus tree.
Yeah,
Their
right.
head is usually a black color with a yellow thorax and the yellow gaster with the yellow stripe on the gaster, and the rest is black. I'm pretty sure the closest relative to this one that looks similar is Camponotus nigriceps. It's basically the same except slightly smaller and no yellow band in the gaster.
So a completely black gaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Then
do these usually like live in trees?
usually at the base of trees and the roots, or just around the tree, because they make large trails going up the side of the trunk. They usually eat from smooth barked eucalyptus trees.
Cool.
It's the same with Mimisia nigriceps and desertorum queens. They usually feed up in smooth barked eucalyptus trees as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've seen some of these banded sugar ants one like here
Yeah,
or there. I feel like
they're
I've seen.
extremely common. They come inside houses all the time because they like the sugar.
Yeah, right.
Mm. Then Mimisia brevinota, it's the largest species of ant in Australia and the second largest in the world if you don't count um, Dory myrmex queens, which reach 7 centimeters. But Mimisia brevinota can reach just over 4 centimeters in length, very rarely. They're deep red colors all over the body, except for on the gaster, which is a black color. But you can also notice on Mimisia brevinota that has two little nodes here between the gaster and thorax. This one is called a petole, and then this one is a post-petole. That's a key identifier in subfamily genus, which I'll talk about after this slide. Um, but like here with this one, you can see it has a single petole right here, the small little
Yep.
spike.
Yep.
But a cool fact about Mimisa brevinota, is that when it was first described, Mimisia brevinota was actually just an extra large Mimisia fulficta worker, so which is a different species, slightly smaller, a little bit brown, more browner in color. Um, so there was fulficta, brevinota, and then there was also gigas, Mimisia gigas, which is now a junior synonym of Mimisia brevinota. So in the taxonomy, really, modern day Mimisia brevis are Mimisia gigas, and Mimisia fulficta is both fulficta and brevinota in the original description. But the
Right.
taxonomy is a mess, so you don't really get into it that much.
Are they still discovering a lot of ant species?
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, I have two species of what I believe are undescribed Mimisia queens. Um, and possibly a few others of my ants are undescribed as well. So like new species to science and stuff.
Yeah, cool. That's really cool.
Mm,
Yeah, I've definitely been bitten by the Mimisia brevinata, or maybe one of its very close relatives, many times on different occasions.
mhm.
They're like
I
either
believe Mimisia brevinota has a range of along the coast up to just a little bit north of Brisbane, down to the border of New South Wales and Victoria.
okay. Yeah, I've seen it maybe of two different species, maybe one in South Australia as well. Um, but yeah, once they bite you with those mandibles, they like I've tried flicking one off whilst it's biting me,
Yeah,
and
they're extremely strong.
they're very strong. I couldn't flick it
Mm.
off. It stayed like connected to my skin the whole time.
Yeah, they use their mandibles instead of fighting more to grab on and hold, so they have extremely strong muscles in their jaws and their head, especially
I
in the
just
larger
joined the
sized
fucking Zoom
workers.
call. Common ants and how it's doing by dealing.
Hey Clancy, are you asking a question? Sorry, or oh no, all good. Um, all good. Will just asked, sorry, Luke just asked a question, Will. He said, William, do you mean you have live examples of the unidentified ants? How do you go about having them identified?
Yeah, I have three queen ants in of the Mimisia genus in total. Two of them are of the same species. I believe the three of them are two separate unidentified species of the Mimisia pilosula complex. And the way that I get them identified is I'd have to do a like a report on them. I'd probably have to get multiple of the I probably have to do genetic testing for them with the mitochondrial genetics because that's like the main way to tell apart super close species.
Sorry, Luke, did you ask a question there? I don't think he did. I think there's just an accidental one as well. So you have to take a sample.
Yeah, I'd have to get a sample of a worker and have it genetically tested, which costs a lot to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, right. And then there was another question from Maru. Is jumping a normal thing within the ants?
Um, a few ants can jump, like Harpagnathus from India. Um, I'm not sure about any South American or North American species which can jump. Oh, Odontomachus as well. They can jump by using their trap jaws and flinging them and launching themselves into the ground, which sends them flying backwards. They use it as an escape mechanism. But like proper jumping is really only done by Mimisia and Harpagnathus.
Is that the like in Southeast Queensland we have the everyone like common names jumping ant. Maybe I should like Google what it is that one you're talking about?
Yeah, Mimisia is usually called like Hoppy Joe, jumping ant, jack jumpers,
Oh yeah,
bulldog ants.
yeah.
There's a lot of common names, so it can get quite confusing.
Yeah, yeah, totally fair. Yeah, I know that is the one that I see at work and stuff. Yeah, Luke, I've also seen a fair few jumping ants out in the bush. It's pretty common in southeast Queensland in sclerophyll or eucalypt forest. They make pretty decent nests, and if you disturb them,
Mm,
they come out very quick, and the jumping is not so nice. And they have a pretty
yeah,
good thing as well. Hey,
yeah. I luckily haven't been stung yet, but it's like it's unavoidable being stung and bitten by ants when you're ant keeping.
yeah, I bet. I
Mm.
actually got bitten last week. And I think there's something about, I don't know if this is the case with leeches and also ticks, but I think there's little bit of something where you build up a lack of tolerance, like almost the opposite of a tolerance to the bites.
Yeah, yeah. With Myrmecia and Rhytidopanera specifically, the more you get bitten and stung, the higher the chance of an allergic reaction you have. Although it's
Yeah,
only slightly, it still increases a little bit.
yeah, because I noticed my latest bite, it lasted like 2, 3 days before the swelling kind of went away and the numbness
Mhm.
went away, which was a lot longer than I remembered for any other bites. Okay, so all of the Myrmeciae,
Pardon?
is that all of the Myrmeciae?
Myrmecia?
Yeah, Myrmecia species. Thanks, dude.
Um,
That
yeah,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's with most of them or all of them because
yeah,
I specifically read a study on Myrmecia gluosa venom that it was evolved to be more potent towards mammals because of the echidna being their only predator.
right.
So so by getting a stronger venom towards their only predator that they have no other way to defend against, it was the best way to protect the colony. And that's why I'm pretty sure that the venom gets stronger every time we're bit.
Yeah, cool. And I'll one last question from Luke. He said he got bitten a few times by a year by green ants. Does that happen to be a thing for wasps as well? They're getting worse after bites or stings.
Um, I'm not sure with wasps.
Yeah, me neither.
Ants, I'm pretty sure split off from wasps. Maybe like 50 to 100-ish million years ago. So there's been like a lot of changes. Um, but I'm not entirely sure if it's the same with wasps.
That's cool. We'll get a wasp expert one day.
I know a guy at my local uni who like um he studies bees. That's like his thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like the same order of insect.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Okay, cool.
This is the part on how to identify subfamilies. There's 9 subfamilies of ants here in Australia. There's Mimiciine, which is Phodole, Solenopsis, Cabera, Monomorium. So basically the small ants. Um, then there's Formicine. I don't know how to pronounce it. Like, that's Camponotus and Camponodine ants. So I believe it's Calamurmex as well. Camponotus and Calamurmex. Um, sure other than that. Then these Dolichodarain, which is Iridomyrmex, so meat ants, and a few other things. But um, they're the most similar to Formicine, and it's the second most populous ant subfamily. The main difference to Formicine is that they lack a stinger and the ability to spray formic acid, while Formicine lacks a stinger but can spray formic acid, which is different from venom as well.
Yeah,
Then there's Panerine, um, which is Odontomachus, um, Mesopanera, Hyperpanera, Panera, and a few other things. They are more primitive ants, like not less evolved, but less specialized and generalist, or more specialized, less generalist. Um, they have a powerful sting. They're on the larger side of on the spectrum for ants. Then the next one is Mimicine, which is Mimicia and Nothomimicia, which are the last two um, living genus of that. There's a few other extinct ones from Europe, Asia, and North America. They have a double petal, which you see down here in the image. Here explains it better than I did with better images. This one has two petal nodes. This one has one, and then this one doesn't have a visible one, which is Dolichoderine and Formicine. Mimicine are typically large in size, strong mandibles, and an extremely potent sting. Then there's Ectotomine. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that either, but it consists of Rhytidopanera, which is, and also a South Australian species, not South Australian, South American, Ectotomine, I think. It has a single petal and a powerful sting. Rhytidopanera used to be part of Panera, as you can tell with the at the end of its name, Panera. Then there's Doryline, which are army ants. So in Africa, it would be Dorylus, but here in Australia, it's like Liopanera, and a few others. I believe Liopanera also used to be part of Panera. Um, then there's Proceratine. I think that's how I pronounce it. But it consists. I only know of a single species from looking at iNaturalist in this subfamily in Australia, and that's Discothyria something. I don't remember the species, but they're very, very small cryptic ants with a single petal node. And there's Pseudomimiciae, which is Tetrapanera, so slender ants. Um, they have a single petal and they also have a sting.
Cool. Is so there's a lot of different ant species in Australia actually. Hey, like a
Yeah,
lot of
there's an estimated like over 7,000, I think, majority of which you can only tell the difference via genetic testing.
right, right. So
Mm.
visually, there's a lot fewer that you can see the difference, but
Yeah.
that's right. Okay.
Yeah, like with Rhytidopanera, it should probably be a species group now instead of just a single species due to the changes from urbanization.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. There's a few questions in the chat. Um, William asks, do you find suggestions on iNaturalist to be accurate for identifying ants?
Uh, Most of the time, yes, because it's mainly a few people. One guy called Nog, another guy called Gelku, and then there's Dan Kurek, or D Kurek, but as he goes by on iNaturalist. Oh, and Nigel, I forgot his last name, but I have one of his photos here on the slide.
Yeah. So there's a few very passionate.
Nigel Main, yeah. He took this photo and this photo and this photo.
Yeah. So there's a few very passionate people that probably respond to majority of the iNaturalist. I guess
Yeah,
that.
specifically here in Australia.
Yeah.
Then there's also like a few other guys, like one person who runs a shop and a few others just on iNaturalist that are around.
Yeah. Cool. And then Clancy asked, what's the difference between a powerful and a potent sting?
Um, from the way that I worded it, powerful would be like painful sting, and potent would be more dangerous sting.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense.
Mm.
So is there a reason why I'm going to mispronounce it again, Myrmecae? Yep.
Yep.
Um, is there a reason why they've only been reduced down to those two genuses? Do you think it's because they're big and maybe have the more difficulty adapting to changes in the environment?
Yeah, they do. Nothomimicea consists of a single living species that's on the IUCN as critically endangered, but but it it isn't under any protection acts here in Australia apart from Western Australia. But I talk more about it, I think, in two slides,
Okay,
as
cool.
well as Perno something else. That's that's the only listed endangered ant here in Australia.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, we'll if you guys, Mario and Luke, if you don't mind, we'll let William keep going and then we'll come back to these questions at the end.
Next up is colony structure. So in an ant colony, you have a queen, male drones, and then workers. And ignore what it says soldier here because that's not the proper word. They're majors, but most people call them soldiers because they're large and they typical fighting ones. In an ant colony, the queen's role is a reproductive center. A common misconception about them is that the queen is the leader and runs the colony, but a colony is more like not a democracy than a monarchy, where decisions are voted on by the worker ants, specifically colony moving. Um, like when an ant finds a good nest space, it'll start to excavate, move brood, then to try to get more ants to convince them to start also moving brood and excavating it out. Um, and eventually either all the ants will be swayed to not move there, or all of them will be swayed to move there, um, based on their own ideals of what a good nest space is. So it's less like a media representation of a hive mind with a single queen than it is like it's more like a democracy, yeah, basically like a miniature nation.
That's really cool. I had no idea. Hey,
Mm.
that's really cool that they vote on and then disagree and stay in separate nests based on. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. It's a pain though when keeping ants because half of the colony will move into a new nest that's better for them, in your opinion. But then the queen and like three workers will stay in the old nest, and you can't move them manually because that will stress the queen out and cause her to possibly die.
Right.
Mm. But also in worker ants, there's individual roles based on your size and age in the colony. So smaller and younger ants will stay inside the nest caring for brood, learning how to clean, and feed the queen and larvae. And then older ones will go outside the nest, forage for food, explore, um, and like fight for in wars. Then with drones, they only really have a single purpose, and that's during nuptial flights to go fly with the queen, find a queen, mate with her, and then die a few hours later. So they basically just spend their entire life, um, eating, sitting around, and then they mate and die.
Okay.
Queens can have a varied lifespan. Some of them only live for a few years, like Solenopsis geminata, tropical fire ants. They live for about 1 to 2 years or more in captivity, I think. But in the wild, they usually live around 1 to 2 years. But they are able to get to millions of workers in around 10 months, which is why they're such a bad invasive species. It's even
Right.
worse with Solenopsis invicta because they grow even faster than Geminata. Then there's cryptic ants, which they're small, rare ants aren't well known or studied of, like Erectognathus here on the left. This is Erectognathus versicolor. This is one of two, I believe, um, car trapjaw ants, which have a caste system. The other one is a super rare one, Maestrium camele, up from like the very, very north of Queensland. And then this is Myrmecia nobilis, a potentially endangered bull ant from Victoria. It only lives in like grassland type areas around Melbourne area, and because of urbanization and developments in there, that environment has become an endangered environment in itself. So the ants are in itself most likely endangered, but there's currently no laws against it, but they're very highly sought after in the ant keeping hobby. So, especially in China, which it's illegal to send to, but a lot of ants get over into Australian ants get to Europe and China of um because of either greedy people here in Australia who go out, dig up colonies, and then illegally ship them overseas, which our biosecurity is really bad, so they almost always get through. And also, if you report them, nothing happens. But it's either them or there's like a case of Chinese exchange students in Adelaide going on to Kangaroo Island and digging up a few mature colonies of an extremely rare plant only found there, or the colour morph is only found there on Kangaroo Island in South Australia.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's no environmental protection around ants then. I mean,
Yeah, there
it isn't
technically is, but it isn't enforced.
right.
It
Okay.
isn't like that's the main problem. The laws are there to stop people from digging up on national forest and stopping them from exporting them illegally. But even when reported, the government doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Then like threats to our ants is climate change, big one, especially for Northern Mimicea. Um, from what it's known, they only forage when it gets below a certain temperature at night. So it's like when it gets under 15 degrees Celsius at dusk, they will only forage. And that's the main reason why they're critically endangered. So there's only 70 known nests of them left along a specific stretch of highway. But a good thing is that I have that someone I know has possibly found a new population in a different state, which could be, which could get them, if their range extends that far, it could get them like not critically endangered anymore.
Cool.
Um, that one is Mimicea nigra, Luke. They're very good at jumping and they're super aggressive, even in bull ant standards.
Yeah, that's the jumping ant we were talking about a little earlier.
Yeah, I haven't kept one of those before. I've heard they're pretty difficult because they like to die after you get two up to like two generations.
Yeah, right.
Mm. All species have colony structure and not all species have the same colony structure and reproductive behavior. For example, ants have some ants run off a gamma-gate system, which is basically there's no queen caste, so it's only workers which act as queens. While most workers are sterile in things like Mimicea, there was another one, but I forgot. It's from way up north, but they only have like with Mimicea, workers can mate with males and start colonies. With Rhytidopanera metallica in the wild, massive nests will usually consist of multiple gamma gates because the queens don't live for that long. But if there's multiple gamma gates in a colony, then colonies can survive for like decades longer. Um, and for your other question, there is no really solitary ants. There is a species of bull though, which is parasitic and only has a queen caste. It basically just clones itself. So there's a few host species for it, like Mimicea nigriceps. But Mimicea nigriceps try to kill them whenever possible because they're basically leeching off the colony and stealing resources. But there's another species which will actively go out and look for queens of the workerless species to bring back to the nest for some reason which I'm not sure. Mimicea inquilina is the name. because they're an inquiline.
That's
Um,
some good taxonomy right there.
yeah. Um, yeah, but yeah, like the taxonomy in most Australian ants, it's a mess. There's things here that should be separate species, that's things that should be the same species, um, things that should be around 20 different species, but under the same name. Like there was a recent study in Darwin, I think it was, for Mimisia melliforus, a species of melliforus. Um, that was under one name, but after genetic testing, it was around 30 to 40 different species under a single name.
Yeah, I find the genetic testing a really difficult one because on one hand, like, I mean, it does verify that things come from a different background and different evolutionary.
Mm,
But on the other hand, if you can't see it at visual level, like, to me, it's like annoying because I can't identify
yeah.
it.
Yeah, like with Mimisia pilisula, there is a big debate going on because there's two different races of Mimisia pilisula. There's a Western race and an Eastern race, and basically just separate on the East and West of their range. Um, but but they have different amounts of chromosomes, so people are arguing that they should be separate species. But then in the same nest of them, individual workers will have separate chromosome amounts of chromosomes. So it's like really confusing.
Yeah, damn. Okay.
Yeah. Then there's also another species which it looks identical to Mimisia pilisula, and the only way to tell that it's not Mimisia pilisula is that it's slightly less aggressive in behavior,
That's
which
a
is
tough,
a bit funny.
tough
Mm.
identification here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. We'll keep charging,
Yep.
because we got to wrap this up in about 15.
This is the two species um critically endangered and endangered ants, Nothomymesia macrops and Perennomyrmex bartoni. Perennomyrmex is the only Australian ant that's recognized as endangered, even though there should probably be more. And Nothomymesia is on the IUCN Red List as critically endangered, but it doesn't. But the government doesn't think it qualifies for protection here in Australia. Um, but the only protection act it's under is in WA. So unless you're in WA, you can legally keep them as pets,
Damn.
but not Phragmites batoni. Since it's only been found twice in pitfall traps in central Victoria. Then roles ants play in nature. Ants are mainly a biological control to keep ecosystems balanced, like they don't have species wiped out by pests because ants are eating the pests to stop them from getting a too large population. Um, for example, meat ants and green weaver ants, Orchophylla cimigata, which is the photo down the bottom, this one, which is taken by she's got legs photography. But like meat ants are they're one of the only creatures here in Australia that actively go out and hunt, kill, and eat cane toads. So they're extremely good at slowing it slightly, like the spread of cane toads, because they are immune to the toxin, I'm pretty sure. Or they know how to eat around it, kind of like how crows can flip them over and then eat the underside without getting the toxin.
That's
But
really
they're
cool.
also a very good barrier to stop reefer, which is red imported fire ants, from crossing over out of urban areas. Then then there's invasive ants, which is reefer, the red imported fire ant. It's the world's most worst invasive ant. They don't spread as fast as Argentine ant, which is this one, which is the current record holder for largest colony of ants, which is this photo. It spreads from northern Italy all along the coast through France, Spain, Portugal, and up back into Spain again. On the coast there, that's a single colony of ants. It contains millions of queens because they can form super colonies. But
How, how does that even, how do they stay connected? How are they still one colony? Because it's all from the same genetic
it's the
background?
same. No, they can be unrelated, but they have the same pheromone scent. So they can
Right.
communicate to each other all along the distance just by spreading a pheromone across the entire way, which will be picked up by other colony members. But they aren't as destructive as Reefer, but they're
Yeah.
still extremely bad. Also, an Australian ant was recently discovered in Spain as probably invasive. But yeah, like Reefer is the worst one out there. It causes a bunch of deaths for native wildlife, birds, amphibians, ants, insects, mammals, basically just everything. It causes urban damage as well, so it's a threat to humans, not just our environment. But the good thing about it is that there was a recent study on ant warfare between meat ants and red imported fire ants. It learned that equal sizes of groups, or the fire ants would always win in a simple environment like an urban setting, but in more complex environments like an environment mimicking our natural bushland with sticks everywhere, leaves spewed around, the native ants always won in a fight.
Cool.
Mm. So it's good that they're kind of really only restricted for the moment to urban environments
Yeah.
because then that provides us with a chance to eradicate them before they spread everywhere.
Yeah, before I guess they evolve or overwhelm numbers wise the next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like move into the Murray-Darling Basin area.
Yeah.
This identification for the two. Reefer is 2 to 6 millimeters long. They're dark reddish brown in color. Um, a brown black abdomen with a two-section patoll. Then I couldn't find identification on the biosecurity website, which is good if you want to learn how to identify the five main invasive species here in Australia. So I put yellow crazy ant. They're 4 to 5 millimeters long, yellow brown color, darker abdomen, extremely long legs and antennae, and they also have a long neck section between the thorax and head of the ant.
I've also been told that the reefer can be identified because they have like a variety of sizes within the colony, which is less common in natives. Is that true?
Um, With yellow crazy ant, they tend to have a specific size, like between a millimeter difference. But in native ants, our Australian ants are more primitive compared to like because we're old world. We've been separated from everything else compared to Europe,
Yeah.
which is just which um, which really Europeans only have a few really cool species, and then everything else is the same sort of generalist, small brown in color. Um,
Yeah.
but like Calomyrmex purpurus here in Australia, they're bright greens and purples all in our Australian ants, which is why they're super sought after in Europe and China.
Yeah, okay. But the reefer, does the reefer have a variety of sizes? Si-
Um, they don't technically have a major cast, which
Yeah.
Geminata does, but they can vary in size. The smaller ants will stay in the nest caring for brood,
Yeah.
and then larger ants will go fight and stuff, basically. Then then prevention. Um, Preventing spread of invasive species is massive for the Australian environment. Um, and I put some ways down here to stop uh, the best ways to stop ants, like not buying soil from areas where they're invasive in, like because that's how they mainly spread around the world and through different places is by having a colony in soil and then you buy it, and also like not send soil that have been from areas with those species to other areas. Um, and to like capture all queens you believe to be from an invasive species, have them identified, report, and if they are the invasive species, then destroy them. It's the same with nests if you can. Report and destroy if you can yourself without like injuring yourself because reefer has bad sting. But like I also came up with the third with the fight away myself. If you see a nuptial flight, like especially in reefer nest, just hit the nest with the shovel a few times because that'll send all the queens back into the nest and they'll have to rebuild the mound because they have a very large, distinct mound which you see everywhere in areas where they occupy. So like
Yeah.
if you hit it a few times with a shovel, it will distract them for at least a few hours and possibly stop a nuptial flight, which is spreading them. But you have to be quick for that because they fly quickly once they come out of the nest.
Yeah, damn.
Yeah. Then ant keeping section. This is Mimisa nigricincta, I believe, in a nest, and this is a
Um,
Camponotus consubrinus colony.
Sorry, Will, to interrupt you, but I reckon we keep the ant keeping stuff, if you don't mind, for another session.
Yep,
Uh, and then you can answer a couple of questions that the guys have all put in there. And then we'll wrap up there, and if everyone's keen, we'll have you back again. I'd love to have you back. So yeah.
cool.
So Maro, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right as well, dude. He asked about the Argentine. Is it Argentine ants?
Yeah, Argentine ants.
Yeah, I think he was asking about those. Is that the biggest colony in the world, that one spreading from Italy to Portugal? And
Yeah, it's currently the largest colony in the world. It spreads like I think a couple thousand kilometers.
yeah, I mean that would be a huge range right there. Yeah. Um,
CHC. What's
yeah, and then Clancy asked, I'll read them out so that people that follow the recording, they won't be able to see the questions. So I like to read them out so that everyone can follow
Oh
things.
yeah, yeah.
He asked, is there a pheromone scent? Is a pheromone scent the CHC? I'm not sure what CHC stands for either. If you could,
Neither am I.
that
It might
one.
mean the hydrocarbons.
Right. And then Luke asked, do ants actively eat each other or eat other ants? Sorry.
Some of them do. Specifically slave raiding ants, which is like Liopanera. They eat ant brood, which is eggs, larvae, and pupa. But once an ant becomes an adult, it doesn't have much nutrients, so it isn't really worth actively hunting ants.
And then Luke also
Oh
asked,
yeah, yes. CHC means cuticular hydrocarbon. I should have known that. I sent a Mimisia frogati to a friend of mine working with Deakin University to be used in a project there to discover, to look at evolution of cuticular hydrocarbons in Mimisia. A Mimisia frogati worker from my colony, which I don't have anymore.
Rip Colony. So is the pheromone scent the cortical hydrocarbon?
Um, I'm not sure. I think
Okay.
yeah, it's I just look just here on a research paper. It says cuticular hydrocarbons help invasive ants survive desiccation and identify supercolony members.
Okay.
So yeah, for the supercolony, they'd all share a similar CHC profile. Yeah, I
Awesome.
think that is the identification pheromones.
Awesome. Dude, that was really informative. I learned a lot more than I expected as well. Because I realized I had no idea, but that just blew my mind, especially about our native ants. I didn't realize that we had such a large portion of ant species globally as well.
Yeah, we're probably on the most diverse continent for ants, and like we rival the Amazon in our ant diversity.
Yeah, that's epic. That's super
Yeah.
epic. Luke also asked, are termites ants?
No, termites evolved from cockroaches instead of wasps.
Cool.
But
Damn.
but it's convergent evolution between the two.
Yeah, I love convergent evolution. But yeah,
Same.
Thank you so much, Will. That was super interesting. And the guys have asked if you have a LinkedIn or an Instagram or an iNaturalist where they can follow you.
I have an Instagram and iNaturalist account. My
Okay.
Instagram is Ants Straya
And
with a Z. Ants with a Z instead of an S.
Australia.
Straya. Straya.
There you go, like that.
Yep.
Sweet. And yeah, he's also in the community, and you'll see like he does a few different posts about ants, and probably is a great person to ask any questions about ants as well. And then Mario asked, do traditional custodians use the ants in any way, food sources or something like that? Do you know anything about that stuff?
Yeah, Camponotus inflatus is one of Australia's only honeypot species of ant. Um, they are used as a food source, basically. Um, they're because they store nectar in their abdomens and turn into basically like a living food barrel. But also green weaver ants. Um, they green weaver ants apparently taste like that they taste citrusy apparently, and you can eat them.
Is that they've got like a green
Yeah,
what is gaster? They've got a green gaster.
yep. It's these ones here.
Yeah, and they're found in North Queensland and stuff. I've actually
Yep.
tried a couple of those. They're pretty tasty.
Nice.
For what you would think wouldn't be a very like have any flavor or taste, they were quite interesting. I've also had them in a cocktail, funny enough.
Oh yeah, my mum had a gin with them in it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again, dude. And I will post this recording within Symbiosis Society for everyone. And Will said that he's happy to share this PowerPoint as well in there. So I will create a classroom where be all about ants, and that'll be Will's little classroom, and also put the PowerPoints there. Thanks again, dude.
Thank you.